We have Matty Taylor, the head of growth at Solana Labs. His focus is bringing developers and entrepreneurs to build impactful projects on Solana. And Matty, maybe you kind of give our listeners some more insight into Solana's origin story, how it kind of was started and formed, and the initial problem it was trying to solve.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, the project predates me joining by quite a bit. It started, I want to say, in late 2017. So two of the co-founders, Anatoly Yakovenko, Raj Gokul, kind of saw the landscape of how layer one blockchains were being built. At the time, it was obviously primarily like Ethereum, and kind of the first set of use cases were starting to get demanded. So like DeFi, a little bit of NFTs. And so they looked at the landscape of what was getting built and felt that there was a big gap in how you could build a sort of super scalable system that could add 1 billion concurrent users in the future and wouldn't have any issues with fees or waiting for transactions to clear and such. And so they took a very different architecture approach than what you've seen maybe with ETH2 and some of these other chains like Avalanche, Polkadot, Polygon, et cetera. So I had heard about it in 2018 or so, and I kind of saw some of the benchmark stats that they quoted in the white paper. And it was like 65,000 transactions per second. And I was like, yeah, give me a break. That's not going to work. And so I kind of disregarded it, to be honest, for a few years. And then they actually got to mainnet in 2020, and it worked.
How would you describe the energy behind Solana and the vibes you're seeing in the community?
Yeah, no, people are super excited. I think a good example of this is we were planning in like early kind of 2021 to have like our first like in-person conference. And we were like, oh, it'd be great, to have 100, 200 people show up at the end of the year. We were going to plan it in Lisbon. And then throughout the course of last year, leading up until the end of the year, when we had this conference breakpoint, we were just like stunned to see that like everyone's flights were just full of people that were there to go to this conference. And like, I think we had a max capacity of like something like 2,500, and like 10,000 people actually like showed up. And so like the whole city was just like crazy about Solana. And like, I think at that point for me personally, it went from something that I knew was kind of becoming a big thing online to actually like meeting people in person. I was like, wow, this is actually for real. And like meeting a lot of the developers that are like building on it and seeing how legit they were. And so yeah, I think ever since then, there's like the momentum actually hasn't stopped.
Obviously, as people are underwriting these projects, and you mentioned developers, right, as one usually a key metric to the success of a project. What is it about Solana that is attracting more developers and is making it that uniqueness?
Yeah, I think there's a couple just obvious ones that you kind of hear a lot, which is just like super low fees, less than a cent per transaction, super fast, and the kind of the downstream, I guess, like user experience you get from those, like it feels like you're using kind of like the iPhone for the first time. That's something we hear a lot, is like it's kind of that version for Web3. So like you get that feedback really quickly, and it feels sort of like a Web2 app. The other big thing that I think differentiates Solana right now is just like this notion of composability. Yeah, so composability is basically just by the nature of like having open source software, if someone builds like a primitive or a piece of software, other developers can use that piece of software without having to rebuild that system. And so it kind of compounds over time, right? And you can create kind of like seamless experiences where you're kind of like integrating with a bunch of different smart contracts at once, and it kind of all just like seamlessly works atomically in an app for a developer. And so one thing that Solana decided from the start, and I think the community has kind of run with and maintained, is that like there needs to be one single like global state that cannot be broken up. Otherwise, that affects composability.
So when you guys like are doing incentives or grants, like is there any specific projects or sectors you guys are going after right now to bring them on board?
A lot of the types of things that we're funding today are games. Like I think there's a huge amount of, unfortunately, you don't see a lot of them yet because it takes like 2 or 3 years to actually create a good game. So these things are kind of going to be in development for a while. But I think that's like a huge area of growth that we see in terms of like funding, still obviously doubling down on things like DeFi, NFTs, has a lot of different types of use cases. And then there's just like a whole long list of like Web3 use cases that like, I don't know how you would fit it into any category. It's just kind of like something completely new and novel. So yeah, across the board.
So what are some of your favorite apps that are live on Solana right now?
Let's see, favorite apps. I guess I'll go with like Phantom to start. I think the reason I say that is just like praise to the MetaMask team for like being able to get a lot of people into the funnel. But like, honestly, from my perspective, it was not a good user experience. And so like getting people in to have their first like non-custodial wallet. And so like, I think Phantom in pretty short order, like really utilized like the ability of like low fees and like fast transactions to like create a really good downstream user experience for people to onboard to their like first non-custodial wallet. Obviously, a big thing that was like pretty surprising to me going into 2021 is just like NFTs took off in a way that I didn't expect. And so like folks like Magic Eden, which is a pretty large NFT marketplace, I think they actually surpassed OpenSea just in terms of like number of transactions and sales pretty recently. So they're growing very quickly. And I think the big one that's like, I don't really have like any super strong opinions about like how sustainable it can be long term, but the team is really solid, is STEPN. I don't know if you guys heard of this, like Nike Run, decentralized like Nike Run Club type thing with NFTs. What I think is interesting about that, so I think this is the most popular DApp in crypto by a wide margin.
Oh, wow.
I think they're racking up like 500 to 750,000 daily users, something like that at the peak. And so what's interesting about STEPN from my perspective is like, I think a lot of people are kind of concerned about DeFi. It's like, where's the growth going to come from? Like financial institutions don't seem that interested in these things. There's a lot, there's a lot of rules and regulations. You need to know your counterparty, all sorts of issues. But I actually believe that like, they don't actually need to worry about the traditional financial institution. You just need a lot of STEPNs and you will grow way faster than the traditional financial industry without ever having to touch TradFi big players, right? And so I think what we'll see with like DeFi, and I think it kind of exemplified by the STEPN Orca integration, is like just this long tail of games and like Web3 apps that people start to love, and they just like plug into the DeFi ecosystem as their financial services base.
So I'm sure most of our listeners heard the big announcement from Solana recently, which was the Solana phone. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about the vision behind the Solana phone and what we can expect to come out of that project.
From my perspective, it solves a huge problem that's hindering crypto adoption like globally and for it to go mainstream. And that is one, like the Google Play and Apple App Store take quite a big cut, something like 15 to 30% of in-app like revenues. And they also very strictly restrict what types of functionality you can have in your crypto app. And then also like the software doesn't really allow for this like seamless interaction that we get with like websites through MetaMask or Phantom, right? It doesn't provide that same level of UX flow within app stores or within the OS. And so I think there was just an obvious gap in the market of like one, solving that problem, like basically allowing any developer to release their phone, to not take a cut of that, and to like get better distribution that they were getting on like the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. The second big thing is that like obviously key management is a huge onboarding issue. Like you have to do all sorts of things and remember your seed phrase and stuff like that. And so I think one of the features of the phone is that like there's going to be like a secure enclave that like embeds the seed phrase natively on the hardware. And so I think just building out a crypto native phone is obviously not going to, your average iPhone user isn't going to care, but like, there's 15 to 20 million like monthly active non-custodial crypto users. Those people are fair game though. If we can kind of go after that very crypto power user market, at worst, I think it'll force, the hand of like Apple and like Google to like go look at these crypto native features a little bit more and like look into it. And if they don't, I think they're in trouble, because I think crypto is definitely the future. And I think these apps natively will grow very, very quickly.
What would you say is the best place for people to learn about Solana?
If you want to learn about Solana, Solana.com, @Solana on Twitter. I would say, follow our Twitter account. If you're a developer, check out our docs on the website. And if you want to like take a dip into this and like, start your crypto journey, join like a hackathon.